Howdy, my name is Boyd Hemphill. I'm here to talk about how the dynamic duo keeps the wheels on contrast in our cloud engineering team. So we are in cloud engineering, we're ops, so we're first responders. Oh, I'm sorry, my slides are wonky. I apologize. I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong thing. I did, I apologize. I have the wrong set of slides. That needs to go away. I can't believe I did that. That's a bug.
Thankfully, it was nothing too sensitive you were sharing with us there. No corporate
No,
secrets divulged.
I had to do, I've done this talk as a series of lightning talks for various like DevOps days and what have you. And so I aggregated the slides, and now, here we go. All right, so I will share again. This is one of those deals where, because I didn't have to walk up on the stage and take care of everything. No. There, hit the right button. Can you guys see that now? Again, I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah, we can.
We can see that.
All right. So we're here to talk about how Robin and Batman saved ops at Contrast Security. I'm the director of cloud engineering at Contrast Security. Let's do this. All right. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of set up what we're going to talk about. First problem. In ops, we're first responders, and that means we often fall into roles like the IT concierge, you know, so you need a thing, so you ask one of my guys, and he ends up being the guy that's totally interrupted and he can never get anything done. We're incident response, which means we don't know when things are going to happen, because if we did, it wouldn't be an incident. And oh, you know, the ubiquitous, and this is true of anybody in tech. Can I ask you a quick question? Where quick is defined as some number between, you know, 1 minute and 5 days. So the second problem is first responders, they need assistance. We need to remove toil from these first responders. We need to improve visibility so that we can prevent incidents and strive for that prevention over reaction in the end. And then there's this messy reality of how do you get to be healthy? And quite honestly, I want to describe how we've become a very healthy team, but I also want to point out that we have a ways to go and some of the trials and tribulations of getting there. The ground rules here are to laugh at me. I'm going to make some jokes. I'm going to make some mistakes. I think I just proved that, and that's fine. Interrupt with questions in chat. The gents who have put this on for us are gonna help us out with interrupting me. Please laugh at yourselves. I will poke fun at you. Learn something, and if you have a chance, share something. Particularly if you've got a great perspective, it's different from my own. I'm coming from a company of 300 people. We have a different set of problems than a company of 3,000 people or a company of 30 people. So a little bit about me. I'm an old man. I yell at the cloud engineers. I'm hiring, so if you want to get yelled at too, I don't know if that's really great marketing or not. I'm a recovering sysops and DBA. That's probably why I yell a lot. I was a PHP developer, and that's why I'm now a YAML developer instead. And I was a DevOps because, you know, we all know that DevOps is a job title, right? I was a CTO at my last gig. Don't do that, it's no fun. And I'm the director of cloud engineering at Contrast Security. If you haven't heard before, there's this guy named Melvin Conway who was writing a PhD at Harvard. I don't think he ever finished it, but he came up with this thing called Conway's Law. A good statement of Conway's Law, I lifted this out of Wikipedia, is any organization that designs a system, defined broadly, will produce designs whose structure is a copy of that organization's communication structure. Which is to say, the way that humans talk in your business is the way you're building software, whether you know it or not. So it's the law, so we have to obey it. So what does this mean? The way I derive meaning from this is there are really two systems in any organization that's building software. I'll call the first one manager land. That's the system of people who produce the software. It's owned by the manager or a manager and the team itself. So we have, these are things we would typically refer to as process, you know, agile, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's engineer land. And this is the system of technology that represents the product of the platform that we're offering out in the market, the tool chain for producing that product and platform, and all the other technologies that go into making it. So keep that in mind. We're really talking about two systems here as we're trying to make a team healthy and become really cracked at both responding to interrupts and performing on long-term project work. So the human system versus the software system, or maybe the human system and the software system. The graphic here is from XKCD, which I'm a giant fan of. And it illustrates Conway's law in some funny ways. So humans have opinions and context, and humans need to be heard. Software has defects and incidents, and it needs humans to care and feed for it. And that last bullet point is critical, because without a healthy and intentional human system, the software system, it'll be quite chaotic. And that's never great for our customers. So I want to be really clear about my conclusions and where these ideas are coming from, and so forth and so on. Damian Edwards, who's a DevOps Illuminati, coined the word toil. Yasser Farah is the person I took the word Batman from. He's a big agilista here around Austin, and the basic ideas behind Batman. So we generally underinvest in the system of people so that we can maximize our time writing code. This can easily be seen when a developer bitches about having to go to a meeting and they don't have their fingers on a keyboard. It's hard. It is hard, skilled, and time consuming. Hard, skilled, and time consuming to implement the right system for a group of people, which is to say, good managers are process engineers, and their processes are people. We're moving people around. That work must be prioritized over other types of work, because Conway's law says that the human system that's producing the software is determining the way the software is being produced and how good it's going to be in the market. So it's my job as a leader to ensure that the humans are effective and that the systems that we produce are what our customers want. That is to say, I engineer that system in concert with my boss and my peers. So I don't just do this in a vacuum. I need to make sure that we're serving the greater need of the company so that the collective effort of our software is truly badass. So this leads to Batman. So, project management's coming for you. Pauline from our crew is there right now, and I should have taken a picture of her pointing her finger, right? You missed another deadline. How many times have you said that this week, Pauline? And then, if you're in ops, hey, sorry, you'll have to complain to me later because my beeper went off, and we all know that beepers trump everything. And can anybody jump in, interrupt, and say that they are still carrying a beeper? Sooner or later, the generation of engineers coming in will not even know what that reference is. They'll think it's some cool new tech.
PagerDuty are going to have to rename themselves at that point.
Yeah. What is that, iPhone duty? I don't know. So we in ops, we are first responders. And I mean, it may seem a bit over dramatic. You've got these military folks and these medical folks and whatnot, but truly that's what we are. And if you actually do a little bit of research into safety culture, you're going to find really quick that ops suffers from the same forms of PTSD, stress, and depression that these folks suffer from. So this is a real thing. All right, but who is the ultimate first responder? Well, we all know that's Batman, right? You got the bat signal going up. So Batman's mission is we have defined it. Now, keep in mind that we didn't just yank this definition out of our hind end and go, yeah, perfection. This definition has evolved over time. It's been argued over, it's been fussed over, it's been yelled over. We unblock those who can't get their work done. So if somebody from Damian's team who's doing development needs to have an AWS sandbox because they hadn't asked for one before, it's our job to get them that as fast as possible so they can get back to work. That's our empathy for other teams. We need to provide that because those people are doing real work. Just because it's not our work doesn't mean it's meaningful. We need to protect our cloud engineers and our high value work from these random interrupts. That's empathy for our team and our mates. We need to facilitate the knowledge transfer, which is to say we need a continuous human system of improvement, which is a continuous improvement loop. And again, that's more empathy for our team. And then finally, we just need to make on-call suck less because that's just empathy for humans in general, and we value humans. And when I say we, I don't want you to think I mean contrast or what have you. What I really mean is we, who are leaders in a group, whether we have a manager title or whether we're just thought leaders within the group. So let's tackle unblocking others. The bat phone. Why Batman? Well, it's fun and it's easy to remember and it's intuitive. Because if you let your engineers be literal, then it limits the scope of what we're dealing with. And remember I said that it took a year for that mission to evolve, right? If we had just called ourselves ops on call, nobody would hit us when they needed, an answer to a question that they couldn't find otherwise. Right now, everyone in the company, all 300 of us know, if you need an answer to something, ask Batman. If Batman doesn't know, Batman can likely tell you where to go and find the answer. And we're collecting that information constantly and pushing that out. We want others unblocked, not just on our team. We want others unblocked everywhere so they can get their jobs done. Because ultimately, folks getting their jobs done, whether that's Damien or Pauline or Shannon or the folks in Los Altos, that's how Contrast makes money. And when Contrast makes money, my paychecks don't bounce. And that's pretty good motivation, really. So Batman is a great communicator. Batman is polite. Batman is effective, and he's responsive. He follows his son in all of our offices now. So we have a guy in Belfast, Manny Doss, if any of you know him, he's a great dude. And a guy in New Zealand right now. And so right now we are 24/5. They cover us and then the US team, which is a bit bigger, we cover the weekends so they can always have the weekend off. This has been great for Belfast because we actually have an office there. And so now Manny can actually service them during all of their work hours if they have a need, which has been, it's not world changing, but it does mean that people get unblocked quickly. And then in New Zealand, we're opening a Tokyo office. We have a footprint in AWS in Tokyo. So we needed operations coverage there. So Nick doesn't take too many interrupts, but what he will do is he'll take a handoff from Manny or a handoff from us for an interrupt if we need to just keep something going, which has been super great. So what about protecting our cloud engineers themselves? All right. We dedicate an entire human to this role. Now, originally, when I first got here, there were just 3 people. And one of the guys, his name is Casey. He was everyone's IT concierge. If you needed something, you went to Casey. This means 2 things. Casey never got anything done, and he's our MVP. It also means that Casey knew everything and we knew nothing. Now, I want you to think about that. Casey knew everything and we knew nothing. Now, if Casey were hit by the proverbial bus, then we're sunk because all that knowledge leaves with Casey, right? He's dead. We can't even call him. So that's a problem. So what we do is we make sure that we take turns having to be the know-it-all. And when we don't know, we ask Casey, or now we actually ask amongst the group, and that knowledge is being disseminated. So all 7 of my people, including myself, I'm in the on-call rotation. We continue to build our knowledge base so that when we're Batman, we have to ask less. So that means no more personal IT concierge. And that means that Casey had to learn to say no to people, which was difficult. People had to learn to accept no, ask Batman, and you have to wait a little bit longer to get your answer. But it also made being on call suck a lot less because the other thing that we did was we removed the deadline obligations. So if you're on a project and you rotate into Batman for that week, your obligations on that project are 0. And if you're doing an estimation, you have to make sure that you count the number of Batman rotations you have and make sure that you're providing an estimation with that in mind. So that's really important. We want Batman to be not busy, and that's going to make on-call suck a lot less. So Batman works alone as far as everyone else knows, and this is what I was describing before. If somebody asks me directly for something, like if Damien hits me up and says, hey, could you do this thing for me? I'll typically tell him, hey man, ask Batman and pound operations, because I have high value work that I'm doing. Damien doesn't know that. He doesn't need to assume it. He's just really busy. He knows he needs a thing. He thinks of me. Okay, I just remind him to check Batman, and Batman was going to get that for him. And what's happened over time, again, is everyone in the company has been trained on this one simple behavior. It's Pavlov and the drooling dogs, which is essentially Skinner's behavior modification, if you want to go look it up. Batman is also an anti-hero. One of the guys on my team rails against the notion that we need a superhero to help us out, right? We should be striving for boredom. And I don't disagree with him, but there's some, as I said, Batman's fun and it's easy to remember. But we do need heroes and ops. It's a subtle nod to the idea that we don't want to be, though, because if you remember the final end story of Batman, Batman doesn't want to be Batman. Batman sacrifices himself and says, I will accept that I am evil, yada, yada, yada. So if you don't know, go watch Christopher Nolan's 3 movies. They're awesome, as long as you like violence. There is a reality, however, that we needed someone to save cloud engineering from all of the interrupts when I got here. And with there only being 3 of us, it was really difficult because we were outnumbered about 100 to 3 at the time. And this really worked. What I think is really cool is our CISO saw this and they adopted it in the security team for the same reason. And during a quarterly business review pointed out that it had really saved the security team too. And at this point, a year in, most teams in engineering have adopted some sort of on-call handle. So facilitating the knowledge transfer, Batman Canon does ask for help internally. Right. So if I don't know something, I just go into our private under oper and I just say, hey man, can you help me out? And somebody gives me the answer and off we go. We learn and sorry, I should just stop there. We learn. Andrew Clay Schaefer, one of the DevOps founders, posted this tweet a couple years ago, and I live by this. If you are not a learning organization, you are losing to a learning organization. So that second bullet point, we learn, I can just stop there. We need to learn. We prevent those outside the team from developing the personal IT concierge complex. And it means that each of us has to be able to gently say no to people. And to be honest with you, engineers really suck at saying no, which is why we end up with scope creep all the time. So helping my engineers practice saying no on something very gentle where everyone has a place to go is also me helping them build a really important behavior that we're going to need when we're bidding projects and things of that nature. And Batman is by definition underutilized. I'll have a few links to some of our Confluence articles that I've taken and put them in my personal blog post with permission. And you'll see there's a heading that says, why your boss wants you sitting around twiddling your thumbs for a week. No shit. And my VP saw that and he said, I don't get this. And I said, did you read it? He said, no. I said, check the math. And I'll show you the math in a little bit. So ultimately, because the busier someone is, the longer it takes for the next person to get service. This is the math I'll show you. It's called lead time. And because, again, on-call needs to suck less. And one way we can do that if Batman is less busy during the day is, the fact that he may have to get up at night in an emergency means, that you got paid off a little bit by having a bit of an easier day. All right, so here's the math. This is actually from the lean movement. So lead time is the percentage utilization times time divided by 100% minus the percentage of utilization. So I want you to consider this slacker Batman who's only 50% busy, all right? But what this means is the next task will start in about an hour based on the math. Okay, and let's call that acceptable. If we can get to each task in about an hour, we're doing okay. Now let's look at Superman. Superman is truly a superhero. I mean, he's busy 90% of the time, and on its face, that utilization looks wonderful. But what that means is it's 9 hours until Superman's going to get to the task that you just asked him for. And if you're that person that has that immediate need, oh my God, I need a sandbox to move forward, and you have to wait an entire day, Pauline's coming for you, right? And she's scary. Look at her. So you don't want project management on your back. But more importantly, we in cloud engineering can get you that sandbox. We don't want project management on your back either, right? And we don't want project management to have to be those people either. So all in all, a better culture because we can get people the things that they need when they need them. Superman is fundamentally not a superhero in this situation. So clearly Batman is better when we want to get things to people quickly. And by the way, in project work, this really matters too. Everyone wants to strive for 100% utilization. Oh my God, if I'm not busy right now, the puppies are going to die. No puppies are going to die. And in fact, not being fully utilized means you have time to sit around and think about how it should be done and design rather than just pound on keys in a panic. And that generally leads to better software as well. All right, so these idle hands, they're the devil's work, right? No. There's all kinds of opportunities here. Gaining some sort of certification like an AWS, Sumo Logic, you can study for these things. And then of course you have all the things that HR requires you to do and compliance requires you to do. If you can plan those during your Batman rotation, then you've got, ideally interruptible work that you can get done, remove stress because you know when you're going to do it. And, again, when you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs, what do? Well, it turns out that my engineers love to what I call cheat. And what they'll do is they'll pick out their favorite thing from the backlog because they don't have any obligations other than to be Batman. So think about that. Now I've got engineers working on what they want to work on for a week, as long as it's interruptible. Things are getting better and people are happier because they got to work on what they wanted to work on without anyone even like judging them. They're just like, yeah, hey, I did this cool thing today. So our sprint demos, we don't use sprints. Scrum is the devil's own work. But every week we have a demo. So some of the demos are like, I decided to pick this off the backlog and look what it turned into. This is cool. Excuse me. So keep this in mind. Continuous improvement applies to the people as well as the processes. So if all you're trying to do is continuously improve your software, but you haven't invested in continuously improving your people, go back to Conway's Law for a moment. You're going to have a hard time being successful. All right, so this is just a reminder of Batman's mission. And I'll stop right here. Are there any questions?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
You're keeping everybody entertained.
Well, yeah, entertainment is one thing, you know, hopefully folks are finding this useful.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's talk about real first responders then for a minute, okay? They regularly maintain their equipment. There's that whole funny thing of what do firemen do? They polish their truck. Do you know why a fireman polishes his or her truck? They do this because they're looking for flaws in the equipment that their life depends on. It isn't a vanity thing, it's a safety thing. Consider that for a moment. And they work to prevent the very thing that they're paid to fight. Firemen would rather be bored. They don't want to be running into a burning building. They simply will if they need to. So this is where Robin comes into the picture for us. Batman needed a sidekick because in the beginning, Batman was over busy. So this is Robin's mission today. And the thing I need to stress here is you're reasoning about maybe what you want to go off and do in these ways, is that this is still being born. Robin started roughly in February of this year. And I would say we're at about 40% maturity. Batman's probably 80 or 90% maturity. So keep that in mind. We want to ensure that what we learn from incidents is put into practice. And you could say immediately, but realistically, pretty quickly. And this reduces the number of times we have to see the bat signal. This makes Batman less busy. That Bruce Wayne Trustafarian lounging around on his yacht. That's what we want. We remove toil from the Batman role. We're getting kind of tired of creating these sandboxes I mentioned, and we're looking into ways to automate it. Turns out it's kind of hard, but I'm telling you, somebody's going to get mad enough at having to do 3 of them 1 week, and they're going to get it done. We provide capacity for scheduled work, which is to say all of the things about a system that amount to changing the oil, rotating the tires. There's so many times when we don't do those things, and just in doing those, just in polishing the truck, we find flaws and we fix the flaws before they become a problem. And that could lead me to a whole nother talk about, okay, if you prevent all the things, how does your boss know you're doing your job? Because nothing happened, right? And so how do you market that internally so that your efforts for prevention and excellence are actually recognized for what they are, instead of, oh, look, you're a cost center because you're not doing anything, we're going to fire you or lay you off or whatever. Okay, so what Robin does, and again, this is under construction. So we want to make Batman less busy. So what do? We prevent, we improve, we maintain, and we train. And I picked out these words on purpose, but hopefully a couple of you went, ooh, that sounds like plan, do, check, act, or observe, orient, decide, and act, the PDCA or the OODA loops from Lean or from fighter pilots. So Robin strives relentlessly today to help the team achieve boredom. And Robin secretly wants to put Batman out of business, but shh, don't tell Batman, okay? Remember, that's the aspiration. Ultimately, we may not get there. In fact, realistically, we'll never be able to eliminate the need for Batman. We just want to roll him out kind of more like Hannibal Lecter than, as a superhero. So maybe we'll rename the role Hannibal at some point. We want to prevent. We study key system metrics to understand what trouble is coming our way, like slow query logs, queue depths for us, message latency, and things of that nature. We propose internal projects to prevent issues that we see out on the horizon, like, hey, let's tune up some of these slow queries, or let's compress queue messages and see what this does to our performance. Both of those happen to be enormously successful projects that were born out of the Robin lane and that were worked. So what does it mean to improve? We study noisy alerts and we adjust it until the alert only comes off when it makes sense, because signal to noise ratio is really a thing, especially if you're getting woken up at night. We added a linter to our Terraform build, and we failed to build before code review, so we're all not staring at code that we know we're going to reject right away. It's a simple thing. It almost seems like it's table stakes, but I can't tell you the number of teams as a consultant that I would run into who weren't doing something that simple because they just didn't feel like they had the time or the permission, if you will, to go and do something like that. And we're constantly updating our run books and our how-tos. And right now, what's really fun is we're gearing up to automate our runbooks because our developers are coming on call. Well, we can't give developers full permissions like my team has. So what do we need to do? Well, anytime we execute a runbook, we ask ourselves, can we automate this? And the job can automate it privilege, while the person kicking off the job to fix whatever cannot have those privileges, which means under lesser privileged folks can still come in and do the job so long as we've got those things automated. So what does maintaining look like? Replacing a TLS certificate, because I think it was Bitbucket we saw go down a few months back because they forgot to update their TLS certificate. We patch servers. We actually have an automated build pipeline for this. Like, we get a note in Slack that says, time to update your things. You click the button and the pipeline runs. You make sure the pipeline went, life is good. So Batman doesn't do that anymore. Robin takes care of it. We rotate secrets, which is almost akin to a tire rotation, right? Hey, that secret's wearing out. It's probably, likely to be, it's more likely to be compromised. People have been trying it. Let's kick it out of there. And we can do that all with just running a Lambda job and having most of our secrets automatically switched out. Pretty cool stuff. All because, well, Robin. We train constantly. We conduct fault injection experiments, what people would call chaos experiments, if you will, regularly. We just right in the middle of the day, we'll go and reboot the database. Now, we plan to do this, and don't go off and reboot your database in the middle of the day. Don't do that. That's a good way to get fired, unless you plan for it and you get executive buy-in. And then we learned that our database doesn't come back fast enough, and our application doesn't handle a reboot of a database well. So we reconfigured some things. And now what we do is we turn off all of our queue consumers. And when we reboot the database, it happens quick enough that we can now do it in the middle of the day. Our platform is far more maintainable. And it means people don't have to be up in the middle of the night hoping a customer doesn't see them, or working in some oddball maintenance window or what have you. Can we just kill Elasticache, and will the system continue to limp along as the developers believe it will? Turns out the answer is yes. Yay, okay, but now we know because we actually did it. Can we just reboot Amazon MQ, and will we lose messages? Can we instruct a teammate to lie 20% of the time? Remember that guy Casey I mentioned? He was our know-it-all a year ago. What if we just instructed Casey to lie to us 20% of the time when we ask some questions? What would that actually do to our organization, our system, and our customer satisfaction scores? Which is a really good way to prove, if you will, are we over-relying on somebody? So again, don't just think of fault injection or chaos engineering as the actual software. Remember, you have a human system to inject faults into as well. And again, make sure you come up with some sensible rules before you go doing this. Just don't think to yourself, I'm going to start lying for 20%, because I saw this talk. That would be bad. Don't do that. So restore a database backup, and then check your recovery point objective and your recovery time objective. So we practice disaster recovery stuff. We have this really wicked cool labs team. So they're like, hey, can we pen test you? And we answer, why are you asking? So now they just go and pen test us. And then we get a really nice stack of results, and Robin can chew right through those and make our system more secure and often more performant as we're going along. We've actually taken our system and restored it to an entirely different region just to prove that we could do it in case US East went down, because everyone knows that US East sits right in the middle of all the hurricanes, because that was a great decision, Amazon, thank you. So how did Robin happen? Well, if you heard PDCA, and again, this is Plan, Do, Check, Act from Edward Deming. Maybe Edward Deming was the boy wonder and he just didn't know it, because he would have been about the time of, the old Batman. Or if you really like dig fighter pilots and all that stuff, maybe it's the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, and act, and that was John Boyd. I'll have some links to all of to a bunch of like first level references that'll get you farther if you want. And I'm sure John Fitzgerald right now is thinking, I've heard every one of these people at Chef at one point or another, from Nathan or Adam or somebody. So yeah, Chef does DevOps. The making of Batman and Robin. So how did all this come about? So let me first give you a hard truth, all right? My motivation here was under the umbrella of sharing some effective ideas. Damien and I really want to entice you to come work at Contrast Security. All right, presentations like this are lies. We present an ideal. And wherever I go, let's face it, man, rainbows follow. I shit fluffy bunnies and rainbows, and y'all follow along and go, oh God, I want to work there because it looks so awesome, right? That's the goal. And it's as if there wasn't any real work that went into this. And then what happens is you leave this talk and you're just a little dissatisfied with your job because now you know the grass is greener over there. Well, it's lies, right? And your bullshit meter should be going off. So I really want you to make sure that you stop and you think critically about what I'm saying here and how difficult this actually is. Because I've had so many people come back to me when I follow up a talk and they say, man, I tried what you said and it wasn't easy to do. And I'm like, oh crap, how did they ever think that was easy to do? I go back through my slides and I realize I never actually pointed out the crawling across glass that it took to get to where we were that looks so wonderful. So nothing is ever easy, or at least nothing worth having is easy. So please keep that in mind. You'll see in the rest of the slides, I've highlighted things in yellow with red text to kind of call out, you know, this is a stumbling block. So again, we have a great thing at going in contrast, but it's not perfect. Please don't walk away with that idea. We have problems to solve, human problems as well as technical problems, and they're fun and I love them, but I'm not going to lie to you. At least I'm going to try not to anyway. So continuous improvement is hard to recognize from inside the loop. If you're sitting inside the loop, I got my guys saying all the time, we're not doing enough continuous improvement. I go get out the backlog and I'm like, you did these things. And they're like, oh, we did continuous improvement. Cool. So keep that in mind. You look around your job critically. Make sure you're looking, not just thinking, well, I didn't do anything to improve the system or whatever today, so we're not doing continuous improvement. We're not good enough. No. Go looking for what you're doing. And if you can't find it, start asking questions. Socratically, right? Okay, so the rise of Batman. In February of 2020, oh, wait a minute. I think I missed the slide. Yeah, there we go. Must have double clicked. We were 3 engineers and me when I arrived in May of 2019. And we couldn't get any sustained effort or strategic work done. We were supposed to convert everything to Docker. That had been 6 months in the making and we had barely gotten started when I arrived. Okay, now I learned that I had 2 badass young engineers. So it made no sense. Converting to Docker when you're already using the JVM as a container should have been easy. But one guy, that was Casey, fielded nearly all the team's interrupts. The other guy was brand new. Our platform was waking us up 2 to 5 times a week in off hours. We didn't have anybody in Belfast or New Zealand at the time. The humane work environment that my boss had hired me into was straining. And I want to be clear, David didn't lie to me, right? This was all like new within the 3 weeks between when I had signed and, you know, and things started to ramp up. And David and I have a long relationship in the past at different jobs. So I knew he wasn't lying to me. It was truly new stuff. So it was really clear to me with that data that change was necessary. And Batman was born. And Batman was born in conflict. From the fact that it was called Batman to the actual need for a role like that. I literally exchanged my own words to over 10,000 written words with the team in about 2 weeks. Sorry, I keep doing that. Okay, 10,000 words. I was told I was stupid. I was told I'd ruin the team. No, really, that those things happened. And you know, I really want to point out to you here, leadership, whether you're management or not, is a lonely place sometimes, and it is always hard. So again, this is hard stuff. By November, we had added 2 new engineers to the team, and Batman was still way too busy. But the team agreed it was working. Particularly Casey, he was like, I'm getting so much done now. And the rest of us were like, we're learning so much from Casey. So we knew that things were happening and they were doing well. There were still many heated discussions. We have a weekly team meeting in a lean coffee format. There were many weekly discussions about what was appropriate work for Batman and what was inappropriate work for Batman, which is to say that that mission of Batman that I showed you earlier, that was still being worked out. And it was very different in the beginning than it is today. And we needed a way to remove, we knew that we needed a way to remove the toil. Again, just a wonderful word to use for low value repetitive work. In February, we added our first Belfast and New Zealand engineers, and Batman was still too busy. And now there were 2 freaking new guys to come and help come aboard. You know, it's just piling on, right? We can see the new onboarding process though that we had developed, paired with Batman, facilitating knowledge transfer. And these 2 new guys, instead of coming on in 3 to 4 months like we had thought, they were on in 2 months. Now, one of the reasons is just, man, he's freaking awesome, and so is Nick. But the other part of it was they kept saying, wow, this way that you set up onboarding is fantastic. You know, I really know what to do and things are just falling into place for me. So again, remember that processes need awesome people to run, to own them and run them. So in this particular case, Jeff and Ken, the 2 new guys who'd come in November, said, your onboarding process makes a lot of sense. It's one of the most detailed things I've ever seen, but it doesn't work for us. turn everything into tickets, create an epic, and assign and reassign that epic to each new person. Engineers want to do tickets, not lists. It seems like such a simple thing, like, why can't you just check the damn boxes instead of move the damn tickets? But ultimately, whatever cognitive interference and cognitive load the list was versus the tickets, that was the key. All right, again, you hear the continuous improvement in that? All right, so by June of 2020, we had an ad hoc conversation about how Batman had become noticeably less busy. The team, including the new guys, started arguing with me constantly about small projects that would remove even more toil. And remember that this argument, this is good. This is a really good thing because it shows the team is now owning that, and I don't have to be the guy driving, which is, to me, that's a huge maturity thing when they're saying, let us take over and drive. Yeah, okay, you do that. Our new guys, they're already contributing to the improvements. Manny is actually in this role right now and is just crushing it. The number of discussions about what is not Batman has dropped to maybe one a month. So we know that we have the Batman thing laid down, right? Okay, it took over a year for that to happen. And that is a year of suck just to get this one key role defined and working well. Again, not fluffy bunnies and rainbows. This was hard work on all of our parts. And if you read carefully from the above last couple of slides, you'll see the need for Robin rising. So the lessons learned. And this is so you can go faster. Remember that changing human systems takes a great deal of time, right? It takes basically 30 days to form a new habit and 60 days to undo an old one and replace it with a new one. Give yourself permission to fail and try again. I put down Batman as the thing that was going to save us from interrupts, and I didn't do much more. I didn't try and over-engineer it. I needed to see what it would become based on the needs of our team and the teams that we were servicing. And give your teammates, whether they're folks that work for you or work with you, give your teammates that same permission to fail and try again. If somebody's really passionate about something, try their idea. If it fails, it was the idea that failed, not them. During that time period, it was common to hear things like, we don't innovate, we're not improving. And I still hear this today, as I just alluded to. But now I can point to data and say, actually, we kind of are. And people get excited about that. So because substantial improvement happens over, I keep doing that. Because substantial improvement happens over time, the time scale of weeks and months, it can be really difficult to see that improvement for what it actually is, right? The loop is really long, if you will. So this is both real and important. Have these stories and these numbers ready for your folks, to show your folks, to show that progress is being made, or to show that progress isn't being made and we need to try something new. Remember, it is okay. In fact, it is necessary to fail. Help your team and other stakeholders see that improvement. Your ability, your ability to provide perspective, that's a skill you should be developing. And their ability to see positive change is a skill, especially in ops. We're always looking for the problems. And so our personality becomes one of curmudgeon. So looking for positive change is actually a behavior change for many ops folks. And these skills take time to develop. Again, go back to the top. Give yourself permission to try and fail. Give yourself time, et cetera, et cetera. So a picture of Batman's health looks like this. This is the JIRA control chart. I've got a link to the documentation if you've never seen it before. I just discovered it in October and have been amazed. So the things I want to point out are, we have less than a one-day average turnaround on any ticket. And you can see that what's really great is our standard deviation at the beginning of the year could rise up to 8 days. That was not great predictability. But we've seen our average come down to a single day, and we've seen, for the most part, our standard deviation fluctuate by a day or less. People know they can depend on Batman. And when people know they can depend on Batman, they use Batman and they don't go and try some shadow process. So this control chart helps me understand that. So I go and I click on something like this. And what it tells me is that just sat and blocked for a while because we were waiting on Atlassian to do something for us before we could complete that ticket. Okay, fine. Do we need to come up with some whole new process so our numbers don't look bad? No, we don't. That's over engineering. We just need to know what the outlier was and why it was that way, right? So this isn't about making the numbers look good. I mean, I truly believe, tell me how you measure me and I'll tell you how I behave. That was Goldrat. And I think that's a really unhealthy way to be. So instead, we talk about intention. And remember the mission. The intention is to get people unblocked and save our team from interrupts. All right. So, which is to say, from the beginning of the year to now, there were 385 interrupts, which did not interfere with high-value project work. That was 385 interrupts that didn't stress somebody out who had Pauline pointing that finger at them. The average turnaround time is less than a day, low lead times. Remember, that was the whole, we want Batman less busy, so our lead times are low. We have a standard deviation that's trending in about 2 days, which is predictable performance. And we know that we're seeing decreases in ticket counts too, which isn't shown on that control chart, and which is super important for us as well. The need for Batman is dropping as we either automate things away, we enable people, excuse me, or we simply remove toil. And we are still not realizing some of the benefits. In terms of like people being able to study for certificates at AWS and such, because Batman's been too busy. So as a leader, I need to go back to my team and start saying, hey, why don't you think about getting this AWS certification and doing some study there? I need to make sure that they understand they still have permission to do that, even though the reality of it hasn't quite been there yet. So what does the maturing of this Robin role look like as it's under construction? Well, wait until we get to the control chart. So Robin was born in November 19 because I observed how much work it was to bring the Batman change forward, which is to say, I recognized early that we would need this, but I also recognized it was going to take a lot more time than I anticipated. So I started it long before I had the people to staff it. So I acted to foster that investment in the idea early. And as the existing team cheated with our spare time, whether it was you're in a project lane and you're waiting on something, so you're going to go do a couple of Robin tasks, or you're Batman and you're twiddling your thumb, so you're going to go do a Robin task. The visceral definitions of that type of work came into being. You see the OODA loop there? We were constantly observing what was going on. We were orienting ourselves to what we wanted. We decided on Robin, and then we chose to act, and we kept going. In February, we had our, In February, we had our final 2 engineers join us, that's Manny and Nick, to populate the role. By this time, there was full-blown angst about what we were not doing, and the growth of our good idea backlog could be observed. It was a panic. I mean, there were really important things that we knew we needed to do, but we just didn't have the people to do them. We found ourselves simultaneously kvetching and reminding ourselves that help was on the way. And these bitch sessions helped us orient towards that mission. There's that OODA loop again, okay? So my team was telling me this is a problem, and I kept saying to them, wait, we have help coming. So when we got that help, and they kind of came online as actual help in about May, we have started to see progress. You'll see that in just a moment. Since about May, Robin has been fully staffed with those 2 engineers. And like Batman, we've had plenty of conflict about what should be a Robin task and what shouldn't be a Robin task. What's great is the trust and habits formed during the Batman birth. All of the arguments that we had, all of the listening, all of the disagree and commit have really helped us work out how this should be handled more quickly. And you'll see that Robin is not doing well yet. So again, look at the top now. Instead of observe, orient, decide, act, what I really put it on is how I work. Act, take an action, then observe what happened, then orient, then decide, then act. You can call that chaos engineering if you want. I just call it I'm action oriented versus analysis driven. So, Robin's had a desired impact. The Batman control chart is proof of that. That Batman control chart is so tight because Robin continues to remove toil. But I did make the mistake of scoping the role too narrowly, and today we suffer from our inability to execute internal project-sized things driven by us for our benefit. So in August 2020, that's now, we've realized that the narrow scoping is crippling us. I imposed a limit of 1 week on the size of any task, and I designed the grooming process to bubble things up that could be done within that week. So we chafe under our current ability to make more substantial improvements, and this means that we're leaning too hard on what it boils down to is I'm leaning too hard on the 4 kinds of work. The 4th kind of work, the 4 kinds of work are interrupts, that's Batman, we got that handled. Daily work, Robin. And then you have internal IT projects, stuff that isn't customer facing. That's the thing we're falling down on. And then you have the business projects, we're doing well there. Okay, so my thinking was I need to staff the internal projects as its own specific lane. That turns out to be false. At least we think so now. We're going to try something new. So we've decided it's time to run an entirely internal facing project within the lane, Kanban style. There's going to be conflict between team members about how it happens. And we will struggle in the first few weeks to make this project go. It's going to be rough. But it's that very struggle. And this is the thing that most people don't recognize. It's that very struggle that is the continuous improvement. Because it looks like a struggle, it often doesn't look like improvement. Remember, conflict is good. You just simply must disagree and commit. It's okay not to get your way. It's not okay not to support the team in the decision that they have collectively made. So finally, a picture of Robin's unhealthiness. So you can see that for Robin, a task is going to take around 10 days, give or take 30. So we're not very predictable. And part of that's chewing through an aged backlog, you know, I'll grant you that, but Robin is unhealthy, right? So, and what you can see though, at the very end is the standard deviation is starting to tighten up in the last few weeks. We're getting better at what we're doing. All right, so that's the story there. And what that is to say is we've done 162 tactical improvements to our platform. That's pretty cool, right? Things take about 7.5 days on average, but that's a hell of a lot longer than the 5 days we sort of like half set out to do. The standard deviation shows a real bias towards small things if you start clicking around. And you know, coupled with the perceived drop-off in Batman's toil, we know this represents a positive impact. We're still working on, you know, seeing that in the control chart. But here's the real thing. We just had a span of 40 days where we did not have a Sev 1 or Sev 2 incident. That's 40 days of silence. That's with 200 customers taking in machine data. So the role is working. We know it is. That means that what we need to do is we need to adapt our measures. Now let me step back again. Tell me how you measure me and I'll tell you how I behave. We didn't put the measures in place first because we didn't want to drive ourselves towards behaviors that may not have been valuable, you know, a self-fulfilling prophecy. So instead we subscribe to these intentions, and now we need to adapt our measures for what we know we can recognize as success, which is really hard to do, right? Because you're basically controlling the variables on both sides of something. But when you consider that what we're doing is a greenfield improvement, yeah, you do need to play with both sides of things. That's just science. So continuous improvement needs teammates who can disagree and still commit. So if you were to come and join me at Contrast, you're going to find yourself in some wild ass arguments. And it's great, so long as you're the personality who can say to themselves, you know, I kind of disagree with this, but I can see the team is coalescing around this thing I disagree with. And I'm going to commit to that. And we're going to see what happens. And if not, then I'll bring my idea back up. Okay? Because ultimately improvement, it's a process of failure. So the key takeaways again, and you know, you still need one of those bullshit meters are, if you don't have control of your interrupts, you are not effective. Solve that problem first. Remember that it is real work, real time and effort, just like writing code, to create a continuous improvement loop, whether that's a continuous improvement loop for your people systems or your software systems. And remember that birthing a human process is messy because humans are messy. And so as you go out to build your teams, don't build your team because you need 12 people. Build your team because you need 12 of the right humans. So with that, I'll leave that up as the useful links. I'm going to figure out how to get these slides to John and Simon. And these are all active links to the various things I've been referring to throughout the talk. Questions, comments? You were wildly polite and quiet.
It's the Northern Irish way. If you've ever been here to any sort of meeting in person, everybody sits in utter silence until the end.
Okay, I thought I was in the Netherlands where, you know.
There were a couple of questions that came up there. I might have been the only person with a real actual question, maybe not. Anyway, so I wanted to know what kind of lies you got Casey to tell, or what kind of lies you were thinking about Casey telling when you were doing failure injection with the people, not just the machines.
That always catches people's attention. I was only introduced to that idea in December, of the idea of hacking the humans, by the same guy who introduced me to you know, how to actually go about doing a fault injection. It's a guy named Matthew Podber at Under Armour here in town. So we haven't tried it yet because we don't have enough. We don't feel like we have enough automated stuff yet because it's not just Casey. Like maybe I'll lie, you know. And there's a whole Matthew had a whole bunch of like safety procedures that you need to put in place so that the person who's doing the lying can responsibly decide when they should lie and oops, hey, this is an incident, maybe I shouldn't. Well, you know, if there's the obvious, there's an incident, don't lie. And, you know, there's the obvious, you know, hey, this is just daily work, go ahead and lie. There's some gray area here, right? So Matthew has a whole bunch of guardrails, and I need to take time to study those guardrails. We have not put that in place yet, but I love calling it out because it really illustrates that two-system theory that I'm working from.
Okay, cool. Folks, just so you know, you should all be able to unmute yourselves now if you have any questions or anything you want to talk through with Boyd. While you're working that bit out, I have one follow-up question, which is on your disagree and commit. How do you find the time, or where do you put the time into reviewing those decisions that you mentioned there about somebody having to disagree but can then commit to make or to go ahead with this other solution or design or decision that was being made? One of the things that I've sort of observed is that there will be a disagreement. People will go one way, and then we live with the pain because that decision didn't work out. How do you factor in revisiting those kind of decisions?
My word, you've sort of hit a jackpot of difficulty with your question, because what I'd invite each of you to do, and I believe, forgive me, but I believe every woman in the room is going to recognize this right away. Go into a meeting with a specific purpose of not saying anything, and watch the loudest voice in the room get their way. Not even necessarily the biggest title, but the loudest voice in the room. Now ask yourself, does loud make right? And I think the answer is pretty obvious, right? So ultimately, you've got to design the ways that your team interacts to ensure that the loudest doesn't win, that the most likely with what you know at that time wins. And so let me go back to with what you know at that time. One of the first things that I do with folks is say, what do we know? Okay, second question, do we know enough? All right, if the answer is yes, let's make a decision and live with it. And because we can always change it. One of my favorite things to say to folks is this decision is carved in soap, not in stone. So we can change it. So that's the other thing, right? So then there's some social engineering here from when I was at the beginning. I sat my guys down and said, I have one complaint with you. You don't screw up enough. I need you to go break some stuff, make some mistakes. I'll credit to you, I'll blame to me. And so they did. They took down production several times. Ouch. Boy, did we learn a lot of great stuff. And as I just communicated, we've had 40 days of production-free, chicanery. So make it safe to change things. All right, so we made a mistake. How are we going to change this? Do we want to blow it up and start over, or do we know, or is the new thing that we know telling us that we only need to make a slight change to it? As people realize that they have control of the process, it isn't a matter of their idea winning. It's a really interesting and careful psychological thing to watch. So if you have a set of meetings you can go to and be more of a passive participant, you'll see this. Now, if you're a personality like my own, I fill a room. It's just who I am. And it can be really difficult for me to not suck the air out of the room and cause the decision to be my own. So if you have a personality like that on your team, take them aside and say, I need you to be quiet for the next 30 minutes and explain why. The people who are going to be good teammates, they're going to recognize the value in that. And the people who just want to win, they're going to recognize the value in leaving, which is what you need them to do. So, I know that's brutal, but in the end, building a good team, like any human thing, is messy and it's difficult. So there's a lot more to unpack there. Did I get you far enough at this point anyway?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I can weigh in a little bit on that. As a member of the team, if it looks like something isn't working out, we often will use the team meeting as an avenue to re-raise the issue. So as a member, you saw a decision be made, you're trying it, you're seeing it's not working out, you'll bring it up, bring it back up to be reevaluated.
Okay.
So there's a lot of load in what Jeff said. Let me explain what he meant by our team meeting. We have this weekly meeting. We crowdsource the agenda throughout the week. So there's a Confluence page, and it's like Jeff has this idea, hey, this thing isn't working. He puts that on there. I want to discuss this. So let's say we have 7 things on that agenda. Our first 5 minutes are spent, we each have 3 votes. There are 7 of us, 21 votes. We vote on what we want to talk about. The things that get voted on to, that get the most votes, we talk about that for 5 minutes. And then at the end of that 5 minutes, I ruthlessly stop the conversation and I say, who would like to continue talking about this? Either somebody says, yes, I do, I'm ambivalent, or I'd like to move on to the next topic. What we do in this way is it means that everyone has control of what we're talking about, how long we're talking about it. And so the idea, and this comes back to Nathan Harvey himself, is the right people are in the room, they're talking about the right things for the right amount of time. And then it's our culture on the team to always drive a discussion towards a decision and an action. So I always feel a sense of loss if we take 10 minutes to discuss something and nothing was decided. So oftentimes if we can't get to a decision, that becomes a research task that goes into our backlog because what we're learning is we don't know enough. So we have this weekly process by which we can revisit these things too. Thanks for bringing that up, Jeff.
Cool, thank you very much. John McCabe had a question there. Did you mention human obstacles? Can you elaborate on what form they've taken and how you've turned them around? I'm not exactly sure what that was in relation to, John. Hopefully you can unmute yourself and fill in the gaps there.
Yeah, no, there was a point at which you kind of mentioned sort of towards the start where some of the obstacles you hit could be, with people sort of rather than processes. And it was just to try and sort of get a sense of, how you go about turning those sorts of things around and what you've kind of encountered in your time. Because there can be, there's tooling problems, there's organizational problems, and sometimes there's people who are kind of stuck in a certain way and take some extra effort to kind of get on board with different ways of doing things. And it's,
So again, you've hit one of the hardest things. People are hard, So first of all, keep in mind, as engineers, we believe we can fix anything. Well, I was a teacher for 10 years, and one thing I can tell you as the truth is you can't fix people, and you shouldn't try. So at some point, as you're talking to somebody, you've got to, if you can win them over, they're just, if they're just like me, I'm going to question everything. But once you tell me I need you to make a decision or I need you to get on board, I'm all there. Other people are just like, no, it's not my idea, therefore it can't be a good idea. You've got to ruthlessly weed those people out, whether it's putting them on a team where they'll be able to function better, giving them some sort of individual work to do, or simply asking them to leave. So not everybody can be fixed. And there's a great book by Robert Sutton called The No Asshole Rule. This guy's a Stanford PhD. Read The No Asshole Rule. And I don't know, what can I tell you? Build an asshole meter, and you use that as a guide. So Sutton, like I say, he's a PhD. So he scientifically-ish defines the term asshole. So it's not some, just breezy deal. It's an easy read, but there's a lot of like psychology and sociology going into that. So one, is if somebody's just difficult, cool. I actually hired Jeff, who was just speaking a moment ago, because he's difficult. All right. If somebody is, they're an obstacle and they're always going to be, ouch. All right. So what are some of the things that you can do to take somebody who's difficult and get them on your side? One, empower them to make decisions. Right. So I try very hard to set up a situation where a decision can be made, and then I try and drive the decision being made. And if we end up in this analysis paralysis loop, I'm constantly feeding into them. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And you can see that Jeff has no hair, and that's probably because I've asked him what we're going to do too many times. Sorry, Jeff. So I'm losing my own too. So, so that's that's part of it. Other human obstacles are, I had my boss say, what do you mean you want somebody sitting around doing nothing? And I showed him the math, and he said, I don't know if this is going to work. And I said, you just hired me. You're paying me a fortune. You going to trust me or not? He said, good point. So now from my VP of engineering, there isn't a month that goes by when I don't hear, hey, I asked for this thing from Batman and I got it right away. It was kind of amazing. And, part of me is thinking to myself, yeah, you're the VP. You're going to get what you want whenever you want it. But part of it is he didn't bother me or my boss. He actually thought to go to Batman, which meant me and my boss didn't take the interrupt. Batman did. That's winning. So, you've got that organizational structure, right? And then finally, the last thing is, and this is true of anything you're going to do where it involves humans. What do you have control over, and what do you not have control over? We needed to control interrupts coming into our team. We could control that. What we could not control is how other teams would react to us. Turns out, Contrast is like this really cool place. So people were like, yeah, we'll try it. And then, hey, this is kind of working. Hey, we're going to have Pikachu and they're going to do a Batman-like thing, and we're going to have Thor and they're going to do a Batman-like thing. Well, there's so many superheroes running around this damn company now, it's crazy. So, so control what you can control, but again, with intention, identify what you can control, identify what you can't control, define success by what you can control. And give your team the power, because remember, you hire these people or you work with these people because they are awesome. Give them the power to make the decisions, trust that they're going to do the right thing, and support your teammates even when you disagree. Does that help, John?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of, I think it's sort of, it's a common thing, sort of.
So I didn't list it, there's another book, Patrick Lencioni wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the notion of disagree and commit comes right out of that. Now that book is written for executive teams and the interactions between them, but you can extract an enormous amount of wisdom from Lencioni for any team. And what's the name of it? Starship Troopers. If you ever want to read a book about small unit cohesion and you just want some sci-fi in your life, read Starship Troopers, but read it with an eye towards, what is this telling me about small unit cohesion? Like your small team? Like I'm just a backwater director of cloud engineering right now. I'm often a 100-person engineering team and I've got 6 people working for me. So Starship Troopers is that platoon size problem solve, right? So, and it's a fun read as well. Other questions, y'all?
Cool. Yeah, there's another one here. It says, what kind of person is Contrast Security looking for to push and drive a project forward?
So projects are many and varied. And we're crossing the chasm right now. So at Contrast itself, we're internally wrestling with the idea that in January of 2019, we were 100 people. And at the end of 2019, we were 250 people. And just consider that for a moment. You go from 100 people where everyone can just talk to everybody and things magically get done through self-organization. And research shows that when you cross about 200 people for even the best of organizations, self-organization doesn't work anymore. But you don't necessarily prepare for that. So you've got all this kind of chaos in the human system right now, and a lot of it's coming together. So what do we look for? So at the individual contributor level, what we're looking for are people who are willing to raise their hand and say, this is how we're going to do this, follow me, and we got this. So I ran this squad of people who containerized our platform for the American Department of Defense across an air gap. It's a pretty interesting problem to solve when you think about it. So I had 3 guys on my team, and I told them, hey, do these things. And our Scrum Master, she just, kept pushing them along to the extent that I could ignore them for weeks and just watch things get done. So I basically got to go tell the executive team, Taco kicks ass. And they all went, good job, Boyd. And I'm like, no, good job, team. And everyone looks at me like, oh, you're just saying that. No. So we're looking for people who own problems. And that's particularly true at the individual contributor level. And that's really necessary in a small company. Larger companies, and heck, the size of our engineering department now, you begin to need people who are not wired to take ownership of something, but want to be wired into an owner so they can, it's often said, just do their work. So call them your soldiers. You got your sergeants, those owners, and then you got your privates and your corporals who are just doing their work. Those folks become more valuable as the company is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So today, I'd say we're still looking for problem owners, but through this next round of hiring we're doing, which is huge, we're going to start looking for those problem doers as well. So I'm trying to answer you both in the context of Contrast, as well as in the context of what a company the size of X might be looking for and why. So did I paint a good enough picture for you there? I
I
lose you,
hope
Adam?
so. I don't think Adam was actually. I asked the question on Adam's behalf. He's.
Oh.
Which actually, if you can you expand a little bit on the exact interaction you have that Batman has with people, and how you might scale that. So it sounds right now that any request coming into Batman is something that goes into a Jira queue, and from personal experience, just because it fits in a Jira, it doesn't mean it fits within any kind of boundary. We get Jira requests that, yes, that's 5 minutes piece of work, yes, that's 5 months worth of work, and the grooming process sometimes doesn't run fast enough for some people to say, to get pushback. So I asked for this thing, why did I have to wait 3 days for it to get groomed and then to be told I couldn't have it for 2 months? Why didn't I know instantly? So how does somebody initiate communication with Batman in the first place? How do they stick the signal in the air? And then what happens?
So in general, we have a channel a public channel in Slack called Pound Operations.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put a ticket in Jira and you use the Batman label, it automatically shows up in that channel. Batman's watching that channel. If you just have a question like, "Hey Batman, what's on TV tonight?" That's probably just going to get answered. But if you say, "Hey Batman, let's just, I need a cookie," and it turns out that what you thought you needed was a cookie, but what you really needed was an entire kitchen to bake it. Now we have a project. So over time, we've developed the muscles to quickly recognize that and tell them, "Sorry, this isn't a Batman thing. You need to talk to." Now, if their project is something with our OSS product, we'll tell them they should talk to Damien or Pauline. If there's something with our main platform, we'll tell them they need to talk to our VP of the platform or the product owner, product manager, there. If it's something to do with one of our agents, we get them to the right person in the agent team that kind of owns the product roadmap. Because ultimately, we're not qualified to do that. So we don't try to solve all the problems necessarily. We try to get good at recognizing them and getting them to where they need to be. So we'll never be on the hook for, "Why can't you do this agent thing for me?" Because we don't have agents. We have nothing to do with the agents, excuse me. But if we recognize an agent problem when we see it, we can certainly say, "Oh, you should talk to this guy, Dan Feidler." And remember, we're more new people than old people. So they may not know who Dan is yet, but they do know they can ask Batman, and that gets them where they need to go to get whatever it is they need done. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It kind of reinforces there's still a certain amount of concierge approach there, but it's literally, they're there. It's, out the door, turn left, rather than walking them to it.
Router is what we call that. Yep. And honestly, what you're hitting on is the thing that probably caused the most conflict about, is this a Batman or is this not a Batman? That of all the things that we tussled over in team meetings or like some sort of ad hoc, "Oh my God, what do I do with this?" I would say that was probably the most common thing that we had to define is, what does Batman do and what does Batman defer and how does deferment happen? And I mean, remember I was mentioning like once a month, we still may have one of those conversations. It'll almost always be, did we do the right thing with this, or what should we do with that, or something of that nature.
Yeah. Okay.
So, what else, y'all? I know it's y'all's evening. Hope everyone's got an adult beverage that wants one. Is there anything else I can tell you?
Sorry, I had one follow-up question. What Simon was saying, that it seems if you say you have like a Jira queue and people are asking questions and that, how do you solve for people weeks later returning with the same question, and does it all go into a knowledge base of some sort, or like a Stack Exchange, or for those quick answer responses that you could just give that everybody seems to have?
So I think I can tell you a pretty good story about that, John. That's a great question. It's like I almost asked you to ask it. So I mentioned that we create AWS sandboxes. So maybe one of Damien's new folks that he's got coming in next week says, "Hey, I need a sandbox." So the first time I created a sandbox for somebody, I didn't know how to do it. And there were all these things that were in my boss's head, because my boss is the guy who like invented all this stuff as technology, and then he's been elevated. So I went to him and I said, "Okay, what are the parameters by which I do this?" I took copious notes. I did it, and then I created a how-to page, how to create a sandbox. All right, so then I handed the sandbox off to the person who asked. And then I got, I want to say it was nearly a dozen questions of, how do I do this? Where do I go to do that? What is this? What is that? Yada, yada, yada. All right, well, I stopped. I took a bunch of notes. And when we were done, I wrote a Confluence page that said how to get access to your AWS Sandbox account. And then I asked that person that I was going back and forth with, hey, would you read this and tell me if you find it useful? Well, a cool thing happened. Not only did they read it, but they actually updated a few things, corrected some spelling errors, a couple of factual errors, and a couple of context things that a developer would have that I wouldn't have thinking about AWS. So then the next time somebody came in and said, hey, can I have a sandbox? I knew what to do. I just followed the directions. And as the last thing I did in the ticket, I gave them a link. This is, make sure you do this. And we still have to every time remind people that if they don't set up MFA right away, they can't really use a sandbox. That's the one thing that we just, so we just sort of eat that at this point. But so it's a process of making sure that you write things down for enablement. What's super cool is, and I see this a couple times a week now in Pound Operations, is somebody will say, how do I do X? And some random person I don't even know will send them to one of our Confluence how-to articles. Oh, just go here. So Batman doesn't even have to do it at that point. It's just somebody was bored and watching operations for a moment. So does that give you does that story give you kind of an idea of how those things are birthed?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's actually a chef behavior that I took, John. From when I can't remember his name. It was the one guy who was doing all the documentation, and how he always seemed like if you found something, he would always stop and just fix it right there. It was unreal how quick he could do it.
And to highlight a little bit more, the primary mechanism that folks interact with Batman is via Slack, and so having that out in public channels allows for folks to just come back through and see things, asynchronously and without necessarily needing Batman to be involved. And it's also pretty easy for Batman to just point again, to the documentation, so that you can, instead of having to redo the work, you can just point them off to answers, so that that kind of helps to reinforce that you can self-serve yourself rather than having to have Batman answer the questions for you. It's been my experience.
Cool. Thank you.
So where do you do you see a threshold between processing your way out of problems and building your way, engineering your way out of problems, automating or building tooling? And is there a point at which you kind of see as a sweet spot?
Yes and no. I don't remember how long ago it was. Jeff wrote an article about his last job called $1 Last Job. And in there, he promulgated the idea of the automated runbook. And that's what got me thinking specifically about your question, John. But fundamentally, it's sort of a problem by problem basis. Is this, should I automate this? Is it worth it? And that's how much work does it take to automate it, and how many times will we not be bugged if we do? And then the other side of that is, and how quickly can we get somebody, what they need? So, excuse me. So it's not so much a broad philosophical thing as it's building the philosophy around essentially sorting things as they come into, that should be automated. That should be automated, but later when we've got these other things that hurt more, so there's some sort of pain scale that we've got. I didn't highlight this in the talk, and I should have. Robin in particular right now is way too tactical. All we do are little things that are generally less than a week. Pardon me. That was a mistake that I made. And I pointed this out, but I want to highlight this. What we've realized is, and this is kind of to your question, what we realized is we were doing things that were tactically valuable and we were seeing toil being removed, but now we're facing some bigger issues. I'm trying to, for example, in Elasticache, we use Memcache as our engine. But you may not know this, but there are two kind of bad things about Memcache using it as part of your Elasticache engine. One, you can't resize the nodes without a reboot, which means you blow away your cache. That's not cool. And the second thing is it's not FedRAMP compliant. And we know in contrast, sooner or later, we've got to achieve this thing called FedRAMP, which allows us to work with the federal government in a SaaS environment. So we know we should move that so that our system is more maintainable. When we have to do maintenance on our Elasticache stuff, we have more capabilities to just work during the day when there's load than having to take some sort of maintenance window or something like that. We've known we should do this for months, but we haven't because we don't know how big it is. We just know it's bigger than a week. So that's been a bit crippling, and we're sliding back. I think that might be the first one that we tackle. Jeff's got his head wrapped around like a larger monitoring vision. Would you call it, Jeff, or have you refined it to the next level yet?
Yeah, still sussing it out, but yeah, making sure that we can understand our systems is that's something I think we need to work on.
Yeah, so again, it's not all fluffy bunnies and rainbows. We got plenty of problems to solve, but what we have is this framework by which we think we know how we can do them. And I've got 2 people sitting in Robin right now. There's no Robin handle in Slack or anything like that. We hide them away. People know, like our VP knows they're there, but they're ours. We control our backlog. We know that of the 3 new people we want to hire, we want 1 more person to go into that lane. And I should say you're not stuck there either, right? You can move out onto a project lane. So as things come to ends, logically, we'll ask who wants to shuffle around, and then we'll move the chess pieces, as it were, and boom, off we go again. So again, no overarching philosophy. The philosophy is more, we take in something and we try and decide how much pain there is, how much payoff there is in doing it, and what the time frame is in which to do it, to see if it fits into something we feel that we can do at that time. And that has led us to be too tactical, and we do need to fix that. Does that give you a decent enough question?
Be pragmatic.
Yeah, well, so that's a so yes, and I see pragmatism as favoring action over analysis. In this case, it's tripped me up. I should have done a little more analysis about sizes of things before we went jumping off into action. But again, fortunately, it's carved in soap, so we'll change it.
Yeah, it's just really kind of like it's trying to square away, any kind of documented, any process is by definition a manual thing. It's a human thing, and they're prone to mistakes. They're hard to sort of wrap compliance sort of around. They're hard to track and all this sort of stuff. So it's kind of that's an increasingly a factor in sort of deciding what to automate. Compliance and sort of auditing and so on. But yeah, go.
So, compliance is actually a big reason for Robin. We're SOC 2 compliant. Do you guys have SOC 2 in Northern Ireland? Is that an international thing or is that a US thing?
I think so many of us work with American companies. We know what it is.
Oh, okay. I wasn't. I thought about it. I'm like, God, that's ubiquitous. Well, wait a minute, no, it isn't. So we have a SOC 2 certificate. Having a clean SOC 2 is really important to us. The data we handle is more toxic than credit card data because we have companies' vulnerabilities. So we need to keep that stuff really super secure. So having a SOC 2 and a clean one is important to us. So part of that quarterly tire change and tire rotation and oil change thing is really about doing the things that you would typically do in a compliance, in a really, in a compliance environment, in a really intentional, again, manner. To the extent that I'd like to create an epic of things that should happen on a quarterly basis. And I'd like to have that epic be created at the beginning of every quarter for Robin to work through, whether that's, okay, let's do a disaster recovery tabletop, or let's, replace all of our TLS certificates, or whatever those things are. We want to build that list. And so here's an immaturity thing. That list is still in my boss's head, who used to do my job and then used to do Jeff's job, and our VP of compliance. Both of these are brilliant people, and they just haven't had the time, right? So as we go through our next compliance cycle, I mentioned that I tend to stop working, and then start writing lots of things down, which is a kind of work. I'm a Confluence developer, just saying. So I'll write all these things down, and then I want to try and figure out how to turn that into the repetitive work that it needs to be for that Robin lane. That's the intention right now, anyway. Other questions? Anything else? I mean, whatever you'd like to know. I mean, if you ask me something and for whatever reason it's sensitive, I'll tell you. So don't be afraid.
There's one more question in the chat there. It says, "Are you using Chef Inspect for compliance auditing?" This feels like a setup from a Chef employee somewhere.
Adam, do you work at Chef?
I want to know if they're using Contrast Assess for their vulnerability checking.
Jeff, do you want to talk about that? Because you, I think you didn't you write the original research stats for that?
some might have, but yes, we do have some chef inspec in use within our build pipelines, and we are also looking to expand that out to be more widely adopted, hopefully to try to move that into our monitoring space as well as basically our test validation. So we see inspec as being a key tool for us to achieve better confidence in what we do, both when we're building and when we're running our infrastructure.
So Jeff's not taking nearly enough credit for the underpinnings of the thinking. 4 years ago, he and another guy named Paul were working at a place called, I think it was Bankview at the time. And they did this amazing talk at a meetup we have here in town about how they had a server spec running on all of their machines. And a server spec noticed that something fell out of compliance, it just killed the machine, and a new one would come back that was built the right way and would be checked every 15 minutes. So I want to make sure y'all know what he's thinking in his head that he maybe didn't mention, because it's pretty amazing when you think about the disposability of infrastructure that the cloud gives you, and your ability to just say, oh, that cow's sick, shoot it, boom, done. Okay, new healthy cow, yay. And again, because we've re-engineered our platform so that we can work on it at any time, shooting a server for us is a trivial event. The auto-scaling groups just bring them back. And 5 minutes later, we're at full strength again.
Yeah, and to I guess to add on to that a little bit, because the inspec tests are so lightweight, they execute so fast, they tend to be close to free. And so you can get a lot of value by, writing an inspec test to, as an example, I think this was back in the realm of Heartbleed. We created an inspec test, injected it into the systems, and then we basically were getting notified anytime a system would come out that was subject to Heartbleed. So it was a relatively easy way for us to gain visibility into the state of the systems, to make sure that we weren't re-injecting what we thought were fixed problems into the environments. That's an example of how and why using spec type tests are really interesting.
And I want to point something out here, because everyone talks about DevOps like they're oh, it's this DevOps. So Dev and Ops coming together and making beautiful things and being happy. No, it's not. DevOps. Operations people thinking, my life sucks. Those developers have it good. Why? And then going and adopting their workflows and turning all of their stuff into code so they could benefit from things like source control. And if you think really carefully about what Jeff just said, that's test-driven development. It's just applied to the production environment. I'm going to write some tests. We're going to go and see if Heartbleed's out there. Oh, look, Heartbleed's on these 5 machines. Are they under configuration management? Yes. All right. We make some code changes and off we go. They're not. Okay, well then we have to do it the crappy way. Maybe we bring them under configuration management at that time. DevOps, taking advantage of all the amazing things that developers do in their workflows and applying that to operations.
Yeah. Good. All right. I think we're running out of questions. Anything else from the crowd and audience?
I'm good.
You guys were, I'll answer whatever. You guys were kind enough to, allow me this opportunity. So the least I can do is answer your questions as best I can anyway.
Yeah. No, this has been great. I think we are at a natural end here. Boyd, thank you very much for speaking today. It's very much appreciated. Jeff, thank you for being back up here and getting in some extra context. That's definitely helped a lot as well. And Damien for making up the numbers. All right, folks.
Paths again.
Say that again, John.
It's nice to cross paths again, Boyd. Nice to...
Indeed. I mean, most of the ideas that are coming here all have some sort of root with Chef, whether it was Jesse Robbins, the master of disaster, or Adam's behavior modification talks, man, is, from way back in those days of the first Chef Summit and hacking with Cheese Plus on IRC. So Chef rocks. Puppet does too, for that matter, but I didn't go that route.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, folks.
Cheers, everyone.
That is it for tonight. We have nothing planned for September at the moment, so as usual, I couldn't work out whether September was the next month or not. If any suggestions, requests, or volunteers, please get in touch with John or I, and we'll try and work something out. Thank you very much for coming along, and once again, thank you, Boyd and Jeff and Damien and Pauline, for all your support from Contrast. Thank you.